This whole thing started about a year ago. I tried to post it back then but got rejected because wall of text, and I was too busy to fix it at the time. I was only reminded of it when last week the first occurrence in several months reminded me of the entire thing, so of course I wanted to share it with you all. I live in a ranch-style home in the middle of Missouri on 1.8 acres of nothing but woods. We bought this house almost 2 years ago. The house was vacant for over 8 months before we purchased it, and the realtors had problems with squatters about 3 months into the house being for sale. They said nothing had happened since though. My elderly grandmother lives with me, as I'm her caregiver. It's just the two of us and our dogs. We moved into this house in early October of 2016. The first incident occurred in March of 2017. At first, we started seeing a bunch of plastic bags and trash around the back of our house, much further out than either of us ever go. We didn't think too much of it, but we did make a mental note that raccoons or something could have been getting into our trash. I put some bungee cords on the cans to hold the lids down, and wrote it off at that. One night I was coming home much later than normal, and around 1:30 a.m. All of the land is fenced in, but there is one back gate. Near the back gate I saw a bunch of trees rustling. There was a lot of wildlife in our area, so I assumed that's what it was. I got this horrible feeling in the pit of my stomach though, so I decided I had to go check it out. The ground was dry enough that I was able to drive through the yard in my car with the doors locked. I shone my headlights on the trees, and a man came running out of them. If that wasn't terrifying enough, he ran straight for the gate, as if he knew exactly where it was, hopped over it, and left. I was so absolutely terrified I called my dad who lives in the area. He explained to me how large the homeless population of people is in our area, and that he'd be over the next day to put a lock on the gate. About 2 weeks after this incident, I was letting my dogs outside. One had already gone back inside, and the other was playing hard to get as usual. I began calling out her name. It wasn't even dark outside. After about 3 calls, another voice, distinctly male, started calling out her name as well. She began barking aggressively and running for the house. I freaked out, but again let my family talk me out of making a call to the authorities. About a month passed by. My grandmother has a habit of forgetting to close the garage door behind her. At around 11 p.m., our neighbor from across the street knocks on our door. He says he was outside smoking, and he saw 2 men standing in our garage talking. He said as soon as he started walking over, they took off. What scares me the most about this event is that they stole nothing, and there was plenty to steal. We have a brand new refrigerator, leaf blower, power tools. My grandma even leaves the keys in the car. But all that time, they were just sitting there talking. This time I called the police, and they told me in the nicest way possible they couldn't do jack shit. There was another incident to call them and not scare the men away. The final incident of 2017 happened probably 3 months after the prior one. We have a sun porch attached to the outside of the house, and the door connects to the kitchen, the outside door to the deck. Basically, we left for several hours to go grocery shopping. We came home and all our deck furniture was stacked on top of each other. The screen was ripped off the sun porch door. I called the non-emergency hotline for my area, and again they said with no idea who these people were, nothing could be done. About 2 weeks ago now, we had our white vinyl fence power washed. Because the fence is quite old, a post came off of it, and the company that power washed the fence didn't know how to fix it. We didn't blame them, so they had no reason to. We left the post in the front yard, but up against the fence. We came back home a couple days later, and the post was nailed back up with a smiley face sticky note attached to it. This very easily could have been a kind neighbor, but I was immediately spooked nonetheless. Cut to Saturday of last week. My grandmother is able to drive again, but doesn't have her own car. I'm busy working around the house, so she decides to take herself to the doctor. My grandmother leaves the house through our door connected to the garage, and I lock it behind her. It never dawned on me to check to make sure she had closed it. About 20 minutes after she left, someone started heavily banging on the door. When I say banging, I mean it sounded like the SWAT team. Someone was putting all their force into pelting that door. My dogs were going nuts and I didn't know what to think. I started to think maybe my grandma had left something behind and was trying to get my attention, but a little voice in the back of my head stopped me. There's no way a little old lady is banging on a door that hard. Suddenly it stopped and I heard a deep and distinctly male voice laugh. I grabbed the baseball bat out of my bedroom and locked myself in the bathroom with the dogs. I realized I'd left my phone outside the bathroom, but I was too afraid to go and get it. I took the lid of the tank of the toilet, so now I had 2 weapons. Nothing happened and I hid in that bathroom until my grandma came home again. So that's the story. I know there wasn't some big confrontation or climax, but I fear that story may not be over yet. I don't know if any of these events are connected at all, but I've got it in my head that they are. And I'm driving myself nuts to the point where I'm afraid to be alone in my own house. The only reason I even included the fence incident is because there hasn't been a single sketchy thing happen in 2018, and then someone just fixes the fence. Less than a week later, another scary encounter happens. I honestly don't know what to think. I'll update if anything else happens. So rather, this one or multiple people, I really hope whatever this is over. And whoever's doing this, let's not meet. I used to lurk Let's Not Meet a lot because I find stories like this fascinating, and then I remembered I had a story of my own from way back when. This happened probably about 15 years ago, so pre-cell phone days. My mom and I had gone to a movie at the movie theater by my house in the evening. It was so fun, and I really enjoyed our time together. My parents were really awesome, and they took us out for outings like this on several occasions. Sometimes as a whole family, sometimes just as a one-on-one affair. The movie theater we had gone to had one of those Dance Dance Revolution games, and at the time I was completely in love with them. I begged my mom to let me play it once before we went home. She said yes and stood to the side of the machine while I booted up the game. I was wearing terrible shoes to play with. They were like dress shoes with a slight heel, so I didn't do very well. I only wanted to play the one round and then leave. As I was playing, a man had walked up to my mom and started a conversation with her. I have no idea what it was about, but my mom is a very polite person, and so made small talk as she waited for me to finish up. I finished and we went to make our exit. This is when things got really weird. The movie theater itself did not have a very big lobby, but it had 2 sets of doors with parking lots on either side. The front door came out onto a larger shopping complex parking lot, and then the back door faced out onto a small parking lot with overflow parking across the street. The doors to both sides were also flanked by very large floor-to-ceiling windows that allowed pretty good oversight into the parking lots. Thank God we had parked in the front parking lot, because at the time there was not much happening in the back and way less people. The man had walked out with us into the parking lot to go to his truck. As a child, my siblings and I were always taught to be wary of strangers, even the ones that seemed kind and innocuous. For that reason, I was very on edge that this man continued to walk with us and make conversation with a young woman and her child. I kept thinking that maybe I should say I had to go to the bathroom or something, so we could go back into the busy, well-lit theater. My mom must have been thinking the same thing, and stopped very abruptly. She said to the man that she had forgotten something inside the theater, and very firmly and quickly led me back into the theater and the women's bathroom. When we got inside, my mother very quickly explained to me that the man had been digging around in his pockets and kept saying he couldn't remember where his truck was. My mom explained to me she did not want the man to know what our car looked like. I suspect she was worried he would overpower us and force his way in. He was probably around 300 pounds easily. I was a very anxious child, and having my gut feeling confirmed by my mom sent me into hysterics. I was crying hysterically and begging my mom to please tell the theater and have us walked out to our car, or at least have them let her use the phone to call my dad to come meet with us. Kudos to my mom, who I know was very scared too and said so, but told me to remain calm. We would remain inside the theater for a while so we could think about what to do. Holding my hand, she led a now terrified me into the lobby and looked out the window. The man was standing a ways away from the door. We stood back from the windows, so to this day I'm not sure if he could see us or not. I was frantic at seeing him still waiting there, and was convinced that harm would come to both of us. My mom told me not to worry though, and that we would stay in the theater for as long as we needed to. Finally, after what seemed like a good 30 minutes, the man gave up and walked out of the parking lot. We remained inside after he had walked away for another 15 minutes or so. We left as other people were leaving and made our way to our cars swiftly. Obviously, the man did not follow us or cause us any harm, but my mom was very frightened. When we got home, my dad was extremely pissed this had happened. She and I are both very reserved people, so I'm sure the reason my mom did not say anything to the theater or call my dad is because she didn't want to make a scene or cause any trouble. I'm thankful that she taught me street smarts, as they've saved me from a lot of situations as I got older and did not have her by my side. The best advice she ever gave me was that any decent person would not be offended by a young girl or woman being afraid of them or declining to help them, since they would probably understand why they'd feel that way. This is a long story as it's been over 5 years in the making. I don't really care to give up my identity, but I didn't want this on my actual account, so I deleted it a while back. The catalyst for me to repost it today on a throwaway is that it's cathartic. Last week, yet another court date for ex-beauty queen Stalker came and went. We'd been expecting things to proceed with her entering a plea of guilty or not guilty, but no such luck. We got another vague reason as to why she's not ready, and a new court date issued months from now. There have been many court dates since she's been arrested. It's been over 18 months since she was arrested for her continued stalking and harassment, and she still wants to drag things on, seemingly to try and stay relevant in our lives. Anyway, on to the story. To recap, my husband dated a beauty queen title holder of a well-known pageant before me. They had broken up long before we met. She was a statuesque blonde, very tall, a knockout in her day, in my opinion. This is somewhat important to the story, I guess. But while she was a dazzling pageant winner on the outside, on the inside, oh boy, she could be charming and beautiful if she needed you, but mostly she treated people around her terribly, including my husband, and he eventually broke it off with her. But she never went away. She would continue to call and email, repeatedly, even after my husband and I met. If anything, after that point, her calls increased. She would call over and over again, day and night, even after my husband blocked her number. She would ask for money and threaten to go to the police, claiming he abused her if he didn't give it to her. Obviously, he did not give her the money. This made her very upset. The threats increased over time and became more and more malicious, but when that didn't work, she would switch tactics and try and sweetly ask him for help. With certain projects she was trying to get off the ground, or more accurately, have him do the work for her and her take the credit. She would always promise that if he just did this one last thing for her, she would finally go away. He did not ever reply. So she would go back to being malicious, any tactic for attention, or for what she really wanted, money. My husband was terrified because, of course, while he never did anything to her, it would be her word over his, and he was terrified of ruining his reputation and career. We unfortunately ended up at an event that she also attended. She had been waiting for us to arrive, and had placed herself near the entrance of the event. As we walked in, she stood across the room looking me up and down, laughing and whispering into the ear of her date, making a point to try and make me as uncomfortable as possible. But that was all okay. She was easily ignored, at least until she ambushed me as I came out of the bathroom. She had very clearly been waiting for a moment when I was all alone. She towered over me. I had no intention of having it out with her as I hurriedly walked to find my husband, but she kept pace beside me, hunched over so she was at my eye level. She was like a caricature of herself as she ambled beside me, smiling maniacally. "Where's your man?" she hissed in her heavy accent. Her eyes were black. She looked like something out of a Tim Burton movie, hunched over with that crazy demonic smile. "Watch your back, pug," she added, grinning. What I didn't know then was that while I was in the bathroom, she had walked over to my husband and thrown her arm around him while he was in mid-conversation with someone and introduced herself to the man he was talking to, as if she and my husband were together. My husband unwrapped himself from her clutches and told her to beat it. She then beelined and waited for me to come out of the washroom. After that, we stopped going to the parties. The last time we ran into her was at a funeral for a mutual friend. She followed me around at the wake. As my husband was talking to the man's widow, I was talking to a friend and his wife. She walked right up and stood with us, joining us mid-conversation as if she were a part of the group. It was so unnerving and bizarre. It was a funeral though, and I didn't want to cause a scene there. I silently picked my wine glass off the bar and walked away, leaving her with the couple I had been speaking to, and her staring at me with a smirk on her face. All in all, this was annoying but manageable. However, the emails, the calls, they just never stopped. She would call my husband over and over, day and night, even though he had long ago blocked her number. She would drive by our house. I even found my car keyed one night after I left it outside, but I obviously couldn't prove it was her. Enough was enough though. My husband had a lawyer send a cease and desist. After the first, she called him from a private number. He answered and she said, "Hey, it's me," in a sing-song voice like they were the best of friends, and he hadn't just sent her a lawyer's letter ordering her to stay away from him. He said nothing and hung up. Another cease and desist was sent, then a third. It seemed nothing would ever make her go away. She didn't actually think my husband was capable of not wanting to be with her, because, you know, her beauty. Eventually though, she got pissed that he was not giving in, so she decided to take things to the internet. I had known she was absolutely checking out my social media, but I don't really use it much, so I didn't really care. She created a fake Twitter account and tweeted my husband's name as a fraud, and tagged his colleagues, friends, investors, family members, every single person she could think of to try and ruin his reputation and career. On New Year's Eve, she posted on my Instagram account at exactly 12:01 a.m., "Happy New Year, scrud." Social media settings were all but set to private. We went to the police armed with the emails threatening to give her money, or she would go to them. She was charged with 2 counts of harassment and a restraining order was put into place. To our shock, the next day after her arrest, our phones were buzzing. This story had made the front page of the news. Clearly a slow news day. Her day in court came right before COVID. We arrived at the courthouse and sat down. She walked in and we were shocked by her appearance. Actually, shocked is an understatement. She was unrecognizable from her former self. Gone was the statuesque, dazzling blonde. She had apparently shaved her head and was wearing a short, ratty brown wig. She had gained about 80 pounds and was now sort of hunched over. With her new height and girth, she looked kind of like a linebacker. To add to her new look, she wore a bulky brown men's overcoat and a scarf tied over her wig like a babushka. My immediate thought was, her outside now matches her inside, I guess. But it was her eyes that I noticed the most. About a year earlier, we had shown a photo of her to our kids, so that if she ever approached them, they knew to run. At the time, my son, who was young, commented that she just had some mean eyes, straight from the mouth of babes. Maybe it was that she had changed so much physically overall, but her dark eyes had narrowed into these deep black slits. As she scanned the courtroom and saw us in court, she would turn around every so often to look back at us and glare. She would whisper in her lawyer's ear and laugh as if she were having a grand old time. She had this pair of big round cheap sunglasses she would put on and take off intermittently. When she addressed the judge, she would put them on, and he asked her to remove them. We thought all this was her putting on a brave face and treating this all like a joke, but we were about to find out that even getting arrested would not slow her down at all. Hell, the restraining order didn't seem to faze her either. If anything, it angered her more. From then on, every day, every night and day, she would post from multiple fake social media accounts, posting photos of myself and my husband. She would put my husband's photo with captions like pedophile and other terrible names that included racist and transphobic comments and captions. To give you a slight idea, she posted altered pictures of my husband, photoshopped to look like he was wearing heavy makeup and referring to him as pre-op transgender. She posted altered and unflattering photos of myself, calling me old and ugly, and that's just the G-rated stuff. Listen, I'm no beauty queen myself. The name-calling, while obsessive and gross, wasn't what bothered me the most. Although I'm not going to lie, seeing hundreds of photos of myself on her fake Twitter account calling me ugly, and obsessively pointing out every single perceived flaw did succeed in getting me down a few times. So why did I keep looking then? Because it was like getting a glimpse into her unraveling mind, just in case it was a clue of what she was capable of thinking of doing next. Because it wasn't her insulting posts that fazed me. What bothered me were the more sinister captions. Keep an eye on your kids, because I'll be watching. Or, why don't you plant some flowers in your front yard? Be good to your kids, because you never know what could happen. Hey, how was your Uber Eats order? She would post pictures of me with an arrow directed to my head, which I perceived to be a gun. She posted pictures of my husband's workplace, which he was not allowed to be within 2 blocks of in accordance with the restraining order, which he was not allowed to be within 2 blocks of in accordance with the restraining order, but the police said this could be a picture she took from the internet. She began to post Agatha Christie quotes like, "Every killer is usually someone you know well," or "Your end is near." Her Twitter profile banner picture was taken from a movie poster called Stalker, like she was in on the joke. We called the police again, but they said there was nothing they could do because she didn't explicitly tag us. Well, I still took screenshots of everything. Many of her posts were nonsensical, but most were photos posted of us on this fake account, all altered with derogatory or ominous captions. No matter what we did though, we just could not get her shut down. I became anxious anytime my kids were outside shooting hoops in the driveway. My elderly mother wouldn't take the baby out in the stroller. She was too scared. It affected all of our lives. Life became so dramatic. She would start to taunt us, saying things like, "Catch me if you can." She would post close-ups of her dog's genitals or a piece of her dog's shit with my name on it, the implication obvious. It bothered me that she now had a dog, since I didn't think someone like her was capable of caring for anything living. Then the calls started back up, this time to our home line. Bitch, then a hang-up. Karma will get you. Then weird chant-like calls as if she were reciting a curse or something. Sure enough, she started posting photos of a pentagram and candles, as well as some sort of altar. Finally, the police asked us to come in and give video statements. We gave them a drive containing thousands of screenshots of posts she had made. They arrested her again and charged her with 2 more counts of criminal harassment. My husband was extremely angry at this point, but as Mama Bear, I just wanted to get this all over with. She mentioned the kids frequently and ominously many times in her online rants, also calling them rude names too, which I won't repeat here because those are the things that upset me the most. The judge also issued a social media ban for her. By the time she was rearrested for the 2nd time, her fake Twitter account, which was literally mostly insults or references to my family, had 16,000 tweets in a 3-month period. She also had no followers at all, so all of these were just posts to herself. She also had no followers at all, so all of these were just posts to herself. The porn sites I had been continuously being tagged on stopped. Things quieted down tremendously, but I still get follower requests I believe are her. At this point, we're all on edge. I kid you not, I felt weird walking into my kitchen at night to make a sandwich, feeling creeped out she may be outside watching. I put nothing past her, as nothing is more dangerous than a desperate woman with nothing to lose, which by the way was one of the quotes she posted as well. I honestly have no idea what's wrong with her. I believe from what I've researched that she is a malignant narcissist. Perhaps some other mental issues at play here too, but I can say she was a terrible person long before she decided to try and make our lives miserable. Crazy beauty queen turned stalker, I would love nothing more than to never meet you again, but if going to court helps you stay away from us forever, then bring it. As an aside, I wanted to mention that we heard from a reliable source that after my husband broke up with her, she allegedly became known to police for other reasons. While my husband dodged a bullet regarding her threats to go to the police saying he abused her, apparently other men had not been so lucky. Since I can't post pictures, I'll leave you with another one of her posts. One that may not make much sense, but to us, it was a statement to let us know she enjoys this drawn-out court process. Violent woman, and the cruelest, never answer questions. They like to continue the misunderstanding indefinitely, so I seek to contact people only in order to torment them. My cruelty is my last attachment to this world, and my last chic.